Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence. I'm your host, Sara Payne, a health marketing strategist at Umbrella Communications, and I'm bringing you fascinating conversations with some of the industry's top marketing minds. On today's episode, we're going to talk social media. We'll discuss how social media has changed over the last few years, influenced by things like TikTok and the creator economy. We'll unpack what all of that means for brand teams and brand storytelling programs, and give some effective examples of how modern healthcare brands are leveraging social media. For me, there's a big difference between having a presence on social and prioritizing social as a primary storytelling channel, where a significant portion of your content originates on social. We're hoping this conversation inspires you to think differently about how your healthcare brand is approaching social. To dig into this topic with me, I'm thrilled to welcome Ben Ellenbecker, who is a senior social media strategist and consultant. Ben has led content and social storytelling for some of the world's most impactful brands, including the UN, Google, the American Cancer Society, and IBM. He's extremely talented and specializes in helping companies make meaningful connections with their audience through social content and campaigns. He currently runs a consultancy based in Minneapolis, and I've had the privilege of working with Ben on some shared healthcare clients, including the Children's Cancer Research Fund. If all of that wasn't impressive enough, Ben was recently named one of LinkedIn's top social media voices. He's just a wealth of knowledge and creativity on all things social storytelling, so I'm thrilled to have him here to offer some insights on this topic. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Sara. So happy to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks for doing this together. Ben, in our work together, you talk a lot about how social media should be a primary publishing channel for brands. And, it's sometimes you refer to it as social first approach to content. I believe this is still a novel concept for many brands. But let's start with, can you outline the argument for why brands should prioritize social media?
Yeah, I kind of can't believe we're still having this conversation. If you remember, in February, Facebook turned 20 years old.
I know.
When you put it like that, it seems like it's been around forever, essentially. And I know there are still so many organizations and brands that are hesitant and scared or intimidated by social. The reality is, the simplest way I think to put it is that, everyone is on social now. 72% of Americans use it every single day for an average of 2.5 hours a day. And so when you put it like that, I think some of the arguments of old of why brands maybe weren't prioritizing social were, well, we don't think our audience is on it. But the reality is, over the last 20 years, it's been so widely adopted that I don't think that argument holds water anymore. You can kind of think of social like it's a party, right? It's a party that happens every single day. And, the whole world attends this party. And let's say you've got a product or a service that you want to sell. You're going to tell me that you're not going to go to that party and try to meet people and sell your product or service. It happens every single day. People are there for 2.5 hours, right? And so, I think that, simply put, you've got to be on it at the very bare minimum on it. And then we'll talk about like prioritizing it, right? So to your point, being on it is one thing, but, keeping the lights on doesn't really move the needle, as a lot of organizations still do. And so prioritizing social is kind of this concept of social first, which is when you think about any initiative, campaign, product launch, earned media hit, or anything like that, how does that show up on social, not just as an afterthought, but as a primary thought? How are we going to merchandise this activity, this new product, this new thing on social media in a really engaging social first format? And that is something that I think companies are still kind of coming around to. I think that consumer brands, right, they've adopted it widely. I think they're at the party already, right? They're there, they're mingling, they're kind of doing their thing at the party. And that's, we see that all the time. I think in the B2B space, more recently, companies have started and kind of committed to attending the party, right? Maybe they're in the Uber on the way to the party and they're nervous, but they're excited to go. And I think that's happened over the last year or two because the channels and the algorithms have really changed, right? In the past, it used to be that you would post something and only your followers would see it. For the most part, actually a very small percentage of your followers would see it. But now we're in sort of the interest era of social, which is an algorithmic change. And that means that you post something and sure, some of your followers will see it, but the majority of people that the platforms will push that post to are people that they don't know you yet, but the algorithm thinks that they might enjoy your content. And so what that switch, this interest era, this For You page on TikTok or the Explore page on Instagram does, is it gives companies like B2B brands who maybe don't have a large following an opportunity to reach new people, or reach a lot of people if they can create compelling content. And so it's easier than ever to find your people on social, to find your niche community, and really connect with them through content. And then when we think about healthcare too, specifically, right, I think that healthcare brands are even more nervous about attending the party, if you will, right? They maybe they know they need to go, but they are worried that they just don't know what to wear. They're just too nervous to go. And that's an interesting one. I wanted to ask you about that. What do you feel like is your understanding of that hesitation or barrier in the healthcare space?
Yeah, I mean, some of it for sure has to do with, the regulatory requirements in the industry and some concerns there. And I know we're going to get into that a little bit in terms of some tips for maybe how people can still create engaging, interesting content, if you will, still keeping those regulatory requirements in mind. I think that's one of them. I also think there is this, as you mentioned earlier, this question around, is my audience really there? Right? Particularly, I mean, I think, brands are going to tend to lean B2B, specifically brands are going to lean more into LinkedIn and be perhaps more hesitant for Instagram or for sure TikTok, right? So part of it's the audience, part of it is regulatory requirements. And then I think there's still this, I'm just going to call the word sort of stiffness around this feeling, this need to be polished and pretty strict in the content. And maybe that doesn't necessarily always bode well for creating connection and emotional resonance. But I think we have a tremendous amount of potential in healthcare, because this is really literally, in many cases, about saving people's lives, right? And making their lives better, increasing quality of life for many people. So I think there's an opportunity to really push our purpose-driven brand narratives, our thought leadership narratives, to draw out more of those emotional stories and not be afraid to explore creatively what that could look like, to your point, Ben, not just in a press release that you put out, or not just in a, scripted speech that your CEO executive is going to give at a conference or to your employees, but unscripted, more organic, turning the smartphone on them, on themselves at their desk, being a little bit more relaxed and having those sort of real one-to-one conversations, not unlike what we're doing today, right? But really bringing a lot of humanity and realness into that conversation. So I think those are some of the hurdles that I see. And I know we're going to kind of touch on a few of those today as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's kind of a creative, I think, yes, people aren't prioritizing social, or some B2B and healthcare brands aren't, but at the end of the day, everyone knows they need to be there. It's like there's a paralysis around how we show up on social.
Yes.
And it's almost a creative problem to solve. And I think that there are now finally some really great modern solutions to that problem, like the creator economy, which we'll touch on, and things like that, where, you have this economy of people on TikTok who are fantastic at making social videos. And in the past, that used to cost a lot of money to make a lot of video content, and it doesn't anymore. You can leverage these creators to make videos for your company to come to your office or whatever. And there's a whole new way of operating here that kind of solves that creative paralysis with social.
Which is both an opportunity, but it's also scary at the same time. But it doesn't have to be, right? Which is why we're gonna dig into that a little bit more, because I know you've got a lot of experience in that area and you've got some great advice for folks. Because I think part of it is just letting go of maybe some limiting beliefs or things that we've held on to for so long, and thinking that this has to be hard or scary or different, and we sort of just need to reject that and go, it's okay, we can do some things and push ourselves and try some new things, and then learn what works for our organization and still feels on brand and culturally appropriate.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is I think the old mind social, it has this preciousness to it. Like everything we post has to be perfect and polished and approved by everyone, and it's going to live there forever, and so it needs to be absolutely perfect. And that is like old mind social, and new mind social with kind of 24-hour stories came, and just the volume of TikTok that TikTok requires. It's sort of, you know, you can publish something and it doesn't need to be perfect. It's the more you publish, the more people you're going to reach. There's just a new mindset around content and publishing. And I think that, yeah, to our earlier points, it's just taken quite a while for most organizations to come around and accept that. And then the biggest problem I notice is how to operationalize that inside the organization, right? I think a lot of people understand what we're talking about and they're going to say, yes, that makes sense. I agree. But when it comes down to actually doing it inside the org, it gets complicated fast. And then everyone just backs off and says, we'll figure that one out next quarter or next year.
Yeah. So before we go too far down the path of the how, which we're going to get to, because there's a lot of richness around that. And I know you've got a lot of advice around that, Ben. Let's pause. And I'd love for you to give some examples of brands that you think are doing social first well. And if you're able to, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear both healthcare and non-healthcare examples, because I think it's important to both see, leaders, modern brands in our industry that are doing this well, but also to sort of look outside of that and stretch ourselves a little bit too. And before you go there, I do want you to just pause and define from your perspective social first again, just so that we're throwing that term around and maybe new to some people. So just give us that definition and give us some brand examples. That'd be great.
For sure. Yeah. So to me, social first is a mindset. It's and as someone who's worked in social for almost 15 years, it comes natural maybe to me because that's just the space that I automatically live in. Anything that comes, across an email that's a project or an opportunity to create content. I'm always thinking of how does this show up on social? And that's kind of what the mindset is. That's what social first is. It's starting with this idea of, okay, we've got this new brief that just came in, this new product, this new something. Instead of starting with, a different channel or a different format or something, you start exactly with how could we make this amazing on social, on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, or wherever. And then you blossom the creativity and it opens up from there. Now we know we're thinking creatively about Instagram. How do we activate our consumer base? How do we reach new people? How do we encourage comments and DMs and things like that? That is social first thinking. And it sort of starts there and it blossoms throughout the rest of the content mix, right? And it doesn't mean that it's social only. I think it's an important distinction. Social first is just a way to start to make sure that it's not forgotten in the marketing mix or in the content mix. A lot of times what I see on projects and with clients is something we'll kick something off a campaign and the week before it launches, someone emails, what's the social plan for this? And then it really stressed out. And that's, where everyone scrambles and pulls together a plan for then when you post a static image on Instagram for a whole product launch, which it deserves so much more than that.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of creativity to be had, right? If we're really thinking about social in the very beginning of planning a campaign, the richness of video and even, other sort of engaging, whether it's an Instagram Live or polling features, right? That could present a lot of opportunity for increased engagement and therefore building increased trust as well. So let's get to some examples. Who do you think is doing social first well?
Yeah. So in the healthcare space specifically, what I've seen is the brands that are doing it really well are really leaning into this kind of educational style content, right? Helpful tips and things like that, but done in a really entertaining and interesting way. As we know, like social has to be entertaining at this point. Why people open the app, sure, to learn things, but they only want to learn in an entertaining format because that's how you hold their attention. And when you can hold someone's attention, the algorithm rewards you with more views. And so people that are organizations that are doing that well, like Cleveland Clinic and Mount Sinai and things like that, and their strategies are rooted around this idea of just putting their in-house experts, which are literally doctors or researchers, on camera. They just put an iPhone on a doctor and say, give me 3 tips on how to not get lung cancer or whatever the topic is. And the doctor talks into the camera and says the 3 tips, and that's a reel. That's a TikTok right there. And they do this over and over and over again. And it is engaging and it is interesting and it obviously is very valuable for the viewer. And so that is sort of how the content strategy works there. And I think if you think about those types of organizations in healthcare, right, the health brands, you have knowledge, obviously, on a topic around health of some kind. And we all know that knowledge is power, but I think in the age of social, knowledge is content, right? And so if you have knowledge, if you have something that you're an expert in, your brand, your organization, or even you as an individual are an expert in, that is the core of your content strategy. And your content, your social content specifically, should revolve around helping other people understand this topic or this expertise that you have in an entertaining format. And so those organizations, I think, do it really well on both Instagram and TikTok specifically. Other companies that I think do it well are GoodRx. That's one of the like a prescription website that does a great job at using kind of the creator economy. And they have some kind of product promo style stuff, but they also have creators that are just kind of talking about their lifestyle and things like that. And so that's a great mix. And then on TikTok specifically, there's this account called North Texas Surgical Specialists that I found. And they do such a great job. It's a small shop in North Texas, as it just like it sounds, but they have so much fun and they jump on trends. And they, use just sort of this platform of like honest truths about what it's like to be a surgeon and work at their clinic. And it's fun. And I think that is important for social, to our part earlier, that so many healthcare brands are so stiff sometimes. And I think the ones that are doing it well are having fun, and they're not afraid to be funny or silly, while still being helpful,
Yeah. A lot. Yeah. Love that. I have not seen this North Texas Surgical Specialist. So cue me after this conversation, pulling up TikTok and checking that out.
Yep.
For sure. A lot of the examples you gave probably are a bit more sort of B2C focused. Do you have any, whether it's inside of healthcare or outside of healthcare, more B2B examples of brands that you feel doing a great job really prioritizing social first content strategies?
Yeah, there's one in the B2B space. It's not in healthcare, but it's an AI tool for email automation for sales teams, and it's called Lavender. And they're kind of hot right now in the content space, because what Lavender is doing is they are creating this really entertaining episodic content that revolves around their topics of cold emailing and how to increase your sales conversion and stuff like that. It's a marketing tool essentially, but instead of talking about the nitty gritty technical aspects, which almost 99% of other marketing tools or tools would lean into, they play on this like fictional episodic content, and they create characters and they do storytelling in this really fun, interesting way. And they do it on social, but what they do is they drive that traffic back to a streaming hub on their website. And so they're using social as a traffic generator, which drives back to their website, but not to like a conversion page. They're driving to almost like a Netflix style streaming hub, so you can just watch more
Interesting
videos. Yeah, it's really smart. And it's really entertaining, which goes back to sort of the core is like, if you have an otherwise boring topic or business, right? Sales software, insurance, things like that, they're not inherently sexy, right? Find a way to make them entertaining. Find a way to make it fun to watch. Think about your consumer and say, what would make them smile? What would make them laugh? What would make them want to watch 3 in a row? And if you can find a topic or a concept where you agree that like, yeah, that's great, and that person would watch several of those in a row, they would, mini binge it or something, then maybe you're onto something, and maybe you should make a series out of that for social.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things, the points you just made that I think needs to be repeated so it doesn't get lost is don't go too quickly to a conversion, right? Because what they're doing here is they are realizing people are engaging with, entertained by the content, and then they want to be able to deliver more of that, right? And it's like, let's have people come in and consume more of that content and worry about moving them through the funnel at a later stage, right? Like come up with your 100%. Conversion strategy around that, but don't go too quickly to that conversion, because then it's sort of like the content is misrepresenting, right? Yeah. Like it's sort of, it appears to be fun, but then I'm gonna sell to you once you show up.
Yeah, you've kind of like severed that brand affinity opportunity, right? You're like, oh, that was fun to watch, and let's watch more, and then like, oh, give us your email address, and we're gonna convert you. It kind of ruins the experience. I heard this phrase a while back at someone's LinkedIn post, and their whole goal around this was a B2B marketer was just to create my audience's favorite little corner of the internet, which I thought was just such a nice way to phrase it, because for B2B software companies and things like that specifically, like your goal shouldn't be to go viral and reach everyone online at any given time. You only need a very small slice. You just need to find your people and make them love your little corner of the internet through entertaining and engaging content. And I just thought that was such a nice way to visualize it. And that's a great goal. If you can find a community, a niche community that absolutely loves your company, your brand, your content, and your product, hopefully, that is a win in today's game, in my opinion.
I agree. That's such a great one to share. Find your people, and I agree with you. There's the other takeaway here is to not try to be all things to all people, because it's a mistake a lot of brands make, not just on social, but in their marketing in general. So I think that's a great reminder here. So let's talk more about the how. We brought up regulatory requirements. I think we got to go there first because it is such a vague, important topic. It's something that weighs on a lot of folks' minds, to make sure that they're staying, in bounds and what the organization can be talking about. Mm-hmm. What tips do you have for how to create social content in a highly regulated environment?
It is tough. I mean, there's no way around it. You know what I mean? It's the idea or the approach, in my opinion, is to build your content strategy around the regulations and around the rules, right? So what you can and can't say. Okay, fair enough. We can't give medical advice or something like that, right?
Right.
Okay, but we can still tell emotional stories of patients who have gone through something. You just got to find a different door to open to make it into your consumer, right? It's going to be different for every organization because the regulations will vary and things like that. But it's a creative problem to have to solve, which is, okay, we can't create content about X, Y, or Z. We'll have to go back through all the rest of the letters and find something we can create content about. And then you just follow those rules we talked about earlier. Make it engaging, make it entertaining, make it something that people are going to want to watch and going to want to share.
Yeah. And I think, some of this is having conversation with the regulatory team and leadership as well, as to sort of get them bought in's maybe not the right word, but everybody sort of having an understanding of what it is that we're trying to do, and having proactive conversations about where, to your point, like where are the watch outs? What are the major concerns that we need to try to avoid? And then how do we make sure we're putting sort of all the right approval processes in place to avoid those things from happening without making it so rigid that, it takes 12 weeks to get anything out the door. That's not going to work on social, obviously. I do want to acknowledge there probably will be some organizations and some regulatory departments that are just super, super ultra conservative, don't want to inherit risk. That's their job, right? And they're just going to say, sorry, it's a no-go.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we have any particular, tips or advice that's going to overcome that. But I think there are some leaders when they're educated on what the organization is trying to do through marketing, through social media, and can be shown all of the different sort of checks and balances that are being put in place to help uphold that. I think that, that can work, that the organization can get there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Those meetings to bring everyone together, right? And to help, like, you bring the social lead into a meeting with legal or with regulatory, and show examples of what other companies are doing in the same space, and ask questions. How are they able to do this? And how could we maybe do something similar, right? And just have that open conversation. And I guarantee you will leave that room with some semblance of a direction that wins for everybody.
Yeah. Agreed. Let's talk about some advice for how to build a social team. Mm-hmm. And I know you've worked with both large, complex organizations as well as startup organizations, and those team structures are going to look very, very different. But what are your thoughts on how to build a team to do this kind of work really well?
Yeah, there's a couple roles that are non-negotiable here, and there are a lot that probably don't need to exist anymore that probably still do in large, complex organizations. There's three that really come to mind that are absolutely required to build a social team, either at a startup or at a large organization. You need a strategist, right? Someone who thinks social first, going back to what we talked about at the very beginning. This person is constantly thinking about how we can take whatever initiative the other department is doing, whatever product is doing, whatever, communications is up to, and spin it into amazing social content. That is a strategy mindset. That is a requirement. Next, you need a creator or used to be called sort of creative, which maybe would be like, a designer or a photographer in the old social world. And in the newer social world, this is like a creator role, which is someone who can make videos from start to finish natively within TikTok or within Instagram. And the strategist and the creator work super closely together. The strategist comes up with an idea or a direction. The creator collaborates on it and says, yeah, we could do it this way. And within 2 days, that post has been videoed and created, and they pass it off to the third person, which would be a community builder, right? Or community manager is what it's typically called. To call it a community builder because they do so much more than managing, right?
I like that, yeah.
Right. What they're really doing is they're in there replying to comments and DMs on our posts, sure, but also out there in the rest of the social world on other people's posts. Their job is to build engagement and to build the feeling of community around your product, service, or brand. And so those are 3 really important roles. You are very lucky if you can find one person who can do 2 of those things. You will likely not find a person who can do 3 of those things, which I think is important for companies to realize that. And in the smaller setting, when you only have one, enough budget to hire one social person, you're going to want to find a community builder who thinks like a strategist, which is becoming more and more common. And then you're going to outsource to a creator, right? Someone who makes great video content. And that's where the creator economy can come into play and take those concepts and make them at scale for your company.
Yeah, I love that. You said you were going to outline the ones you think every brand needs to have, and then you were going to talk about ones maybe they don't need to have.
Ooh.
You want to go there?
No. No, there's so many titles. I wouldn't be able to even know where to begin. I just think that the org charts can get bloated as
yeah.
well.
Sure. Fair enough.
And this is specific to social. I won't speak to the rest of the marketing functions and things like that.
Yeah.
Whether it's director of social or senior manager and all those things, it's all, semantics at this point. You need someone who thinks strategically, someone who can make great creative, and then someone who has a knack for building community.
Yeah, it's more about the skill sets and the strengths, the expertise that they bring to the table, versus the titling structures, et cetera. And to your point, maybe there is some legacy, old school thinking that needs to be evaluated a little bit in terms of these team structures, and like really ask brands and marketing leadership need to truly ask themselves, do I have these 3 skill sets on my team today? And if I don't, do I have the resources to hire them in-house? And if not, how do I augment with, external partners, whether it be a PR firm or, to your point, bringing in creatives or even someone like you as a social strategist. Ben, let's talk about the use of external creators. When should a brand think about using them? Obviously, you just gave a great example. You need to have a creator on your team, and if you don't, then you need to find some. But I think this notion scares some people because I think there's this conception or perception, right or wrong, that people are going to be giving up control, right, of their brand to a creator. So let's talk a little bit about when a brand should think about using them and what that's like and how they can do that well.
Yeah, let me start with defining it, because I think that there can be some confusion in the industry about the difference between influencer and creator. So if you remember years ago when influencer marketing was the hottest thing, and everybody, is activating influencers to talk about their product or whatever on the influencers' profiles because they want to reach their 250,000 followers or whatever. That's influencer marketing. We all totally understand that for a very long time. It's my opinion that influencer marketing is dead because the trust, right? Consumers caught on. When it was first revealed, we're like, oh my gosh, this person believes in that product. I'm going to buy it. That's amazing. But now it's hashtag ad at the beginning of the caption, and we've caught on. We all understand that they're getting paid to say this, and we don't believe it anymore. So it's lost its power, its buying power, in my opinion. And so enter the creator economy, which is not about how many followers a video maker, right? At the end of the day, these people are experts at making social video content with their iPhones. Influencers are too, and so are creators. The creator economy is not about how many followers that person has or how many people they can reach. It's about using them as a production resource, right? They're experts at making short form, engaging video content that has a hook at the beginning, that gets people to watch it through till the end. And that's the type of content that all brands need right now, and not just one video a month. We need it at scale. We need 20 videos a month. And so how the creator economy works is you can go out and, you have a niche that you want to play in, whatever that is. If it's in healthcare, or if it's in a B2B niche or any other thing, or a consumer niche, and you go out and you find a creator who's making awesome content in that niche. You can just go on TikTok and search some keywords, and I guarantee you will find someone that you love. It'll be like, wow, that person is making such good videos. If only they were on my team making that for us. That's how you leverage the creator economy. They can be. And it's really simple. There's obviously, agencies that specialize in this type of outreach now. But if you don't want to mess with that, you just DM them and say, hey, I love your content. Do you want to make some videos for us too? And then you just kind of negotiate and get the price and all that.
Contract in place with somebody, whether it's a longer term gig or not. It could be for a certain campaign project, what have you. Try them out. You like their style. Look at a longer term ongoing thing with them if it seems like they really do a great job of capturing your brand in the style that you like.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say a couple tips on that is obviously the creators prefer longer term contracts, and that can influence the cost and potentially bring it down. Sure. But it works better for the brands too. I mean, obviously there's a little test period to make sure that you guys are aligned and the content is what you expected. But after you get through that, the longer term partnerships work better for the brands too, because that person becomes a regular face on your profile, right? They're in some regards, they're becoming one of the several faces of your brand for that quarter, that year, or whatever. And that is fantastic for engagement for consumers. When they see that person again on their feed, they know exactly what brand it's coming from, what product that person's talking about. So it's sort of a win-win. And so the recommendation there is to definitely partner with creators and think about longer term contracts, maybe a 3-month partnership where you can kind of make the scope of work something like they're going to give us 4 videos per month for 3 months, and then we'll reevaluate for whatever the cost is, right? And then to your point earlier about how you're sort of releasing control, it can be really collaborative, right? You can brief them. We want you to create video content about X topic, Y, or Z. Next month we have a new launch or a new initiative, and we want you to touch on that. And the rule is really to let the creator do the ideation for you, because that's what they're great at.
Yeah.
They'll pitch you back several concepts. You choose your favorite. They go and produce it. It doesn't take long because they're shooting iPhone usually. And then you review the content, and you can edit if you want or not. And it is, in my opinion, the new working model of how branded content is getting produced now and will be produced in the future. Not only for all the things we just walked through on how beneficial it is for brands, but it also produces the most engaging content, right? That's what we all love to watch, are people, real life people talking to camera out there in the world doing amazing things. That's what TikTok is. Every time you swipe, it's a different person or a creator, right, doing something or talking about something, and it's just incredibly engaging.
Yeah, absolutely. You started to talk about some different, budgeting structures or contract structures you could put in place with creators. Let's talk about budget more broadly. Mm-hmm. How should brands think about their budget as it pertains to social? What do you think is, I know it's all relative, but, healthy or a viable budget to do some of the things that we've been talking about?
Yeah, it's a tough one to say, because to your point, it totally depends on the overall marketing budget for any given organization. I would say you've got to have a separate bucket for production, right? For this creator content, for other style video shoots or photo or something like that. A lot of times what I see is, a marketing team will come together to launch something or to talk about a new topic or something, and all these great ideas will come up, and we'll get all the way through the planning of it all. And then someone says, well, how are we going to pay for the shoot or whatever the thing is? And they haven't quite thought through that idea of it costs money to make content, right?
Yes.
And sort of appear. And so that's definitely a must, is you've got to sort of make sure you think, I actually like to start there, because when you have $20,000 for production for a given initiative, it gives you a ballpark to brainstorm within, right? We're not going to come up with ideas that cost $100,000. We're only going to come up with the ideas that cost whatever money we have. And so it's actually a great place to start in terms of ideation and creative.
Yeah. All of you marketing leaders listening out there, we just started the year, but when it comes to your 2025 marketing budget, make sure you've got a healthy bucket and line item for the production of content. And if you still have room in your 2024 budget, you should make sure you're reserving those dollars as well. We're almost out of time, but let's talk about something that I think a lot of brand leaders are skeptical about, and that is TikTok. We've mentioned it a couple of times. I think, many marketing leaders are either intimidated by it, or they think it's not for B2B brands, or they think their audience isn't on TikTok. So can you pitch the case for why brands should be on TikTok, or what types of brands should be on TikTok?
Yeah, I think everyone should be on it, and I know that that's sort of controversial because of the demographic that uses it so heavily, which is Gen Z. And maybe you have an older audience, right? And you say, why we don't want to reach Gen Z, which is totally understandable. And I think it's a strong argument. The truth is, though, is Gen Z is, if you have a brand that you want to be around for a long time, you have an opportunity to meet Gen Z right now in a format that they find really entertaining and engaging, and do it in a way that's fun and interesting, and sort of get some hooks in them right now for later on. So there's one argument to make there. The other one is that TikTok, a lot of times right now, is the birthplace of viral content for the rest of the internet.
Yes.
Right? So if you post something on TikTok and it goes viral or it gets a lot of engagement, you probably have heard this, you're going to see it on Instagram like maybe 2 weeks later. And then you're going to see it on Facebook like a month later, right? And so whatever happens on TikTok slowly trickles through to the rest of social and of online. And so there's an opportunity there to kind of jumpstart and reach a lot of people very, very quickly with how their algorithm works. And then lastly, speaking to the algorithm, it's one of the places, I talked a little bit about the interest era of social right now, where you can reach really, really niche but passionate communities on TikTok with your content. And so let's say you have a B2B organization or a brand, and you don't feel like you have any business being on TikTok and talking to Gen Zers. Well, whoever you're trying to reach is on TikTok, and there's a small group of them, but they're incredibly engaged and they love watching content. And it goes back to that point I made earlier. Your job should be to be, the best little corner of the internet for that person. And a lot of times part of that corner is on TikTok. So I've got 4 kind of quick tips for TikTok right now that I think.
Yeah, that's great. Let's do it.
You can just put them in their pocket. And the truth is if you're an expert on something, on TikTok, one of the quickest ways to get engagement is teach people something that they don't know yet or didn't already know. So make your content helpful and educational, and do it in an entertaining way. That's number 2. Use a hook at the beginning, get them watching out of the gate, and do it in a very entertaining way. If you don't understand how to do that, talk to a creator like we just talked about, because that's what they do professionally. On the B2B and healthcare side for TikTok, stop being so serious. Right? We don't have to be serious on TikTok. We can be funny, we can be raw, we can be human. And that's what performs there. So it's actually an opportunity to experiment with a different side of the brand or a different audience and have some creative fun there. And then lastly, I think a lot of people are intimidated by the trends aspect of TikTok. It started this trend, and it still is a very trend-centered platform, but it doesn't have to be for your strategy. If that's something that just like logistically, you can't jump on trends within 24 hours. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be on there because you want to wash your hands of it. It's okay. You don't need to jump on trends. You can still create engaging content that can still reach a lot of people without having to jump on the latest trending audio or filter or whatever. Yeah, no,
I think that's great. Those are excellent tips. Ben, I feel like there's so much we could go into on this topic. It's so rich, a lot of really great insights. Before we go, I want to take a minute to get some insights from you, a part of a special segment we call the Collective Quickfire. I've got 4 questions for you. First question is, what topic is overhyped in marketing?
Overhyped in marketing? Influencer marketing, I think. I don't know if it's still overhyped as it was, but as I said earlier, I think it's on the way out, and so we'll go with that one.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. We've got to talk about AI, Ben. We haven't yet. Give listeners a couple quick examples of valuable ways that you're tapping into generative AI in your day-to-day work.
Yeah, for sure. I would say like top surface level ideation for social concepts. If you know how to prompt AI to start to think like a social marketer, and you want, an Instagram video idea for whatever topic you need to talk about for that day, it's a great tool for an idea starter. That's for sure.
I love that. Yeah, I love using it as a brainstorm partner.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay current on trends and your own professional development, Ben? Do you have some go-to sources that you turn to for new information, certain organizations that you follow?
Yeah, LinkedIn has changed so much over the last year. It's, it used to be, a resume holder, and now they've just changed the whole platform. It actually has a creator program, and so it's encouraging people to post more and to give tips and stuff like that. So I've been able to grow a community, excuse me, on LinkedIn, and my feed is just filled with social marketers who are constantly giving tips and case studies and amazing things that they saw online. And so that's where I go, every morning to kind of get in the brain space for thinking creatively about social. And I have some newsletters too. There's a lot of great, thought leaders who have started their own newsletters that send once a week for, best in class social that's out there right now.
Yeah, no, I love that. Lastly, what's the best podcast episode or book on either leadership or marketing that you've consumed recently?
Best podcast episode. This is kind of an old one, but I still listen to it. Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn, has a podcast on entrepreneurship. I'm trying to think of the name of it. We can put it in the show notes, name, but it's a great podcast. It interviews entrepreneurs and builders who have built, startups to billion-dollar companies, and just talks about how they did it, what challenges they faced, and it's really inspiring. And it's also just fun to hear sort of how, these companies started from nothing and grew to unicorns. So I'd say that one.
Oh, that's really great. Well, this has been fun, Ben. Thanks so much for doing this with me today. A lot of really great insights for folks. I suspect people may want to reach out to you and talk social a little bit further. How can listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you. I would start on LinkedIn. It's Ben Ellenbecker. You can find me there. Otherwise, benellenbecker.com is my website. And I wanted to mention on the website, I do this thing called free content chats, which there's a calendar on there. You can book 30 minutes with me for free and I'll give you, any help I can offer. It doesn't matter if you are a thought leader or you have, your own company, or you're a marketing leader at an organization, or you run an agency and you just want to talk shop. It's just a great, 30-minute chat about anything that comes up. And I've been doing that for the last 6 months or so, and it's been so awesome to just meet people and, talk shop. So book 30 minutes with me at benellenbecker.com. Otherwise, connect on LinkedIn.
Love it. Thanks, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
As usual, the Collective dished out some pretty great insights today. If you're feeling inspired, do us a favor and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for being part of the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence, because the future of healthcare depends on it. See you next time.